Hey, entrepreneurs, let's talk about a common question I get from you guys, which is, should I go deep or wide? If you have a whole bunch of projects, should you diversify or should you really focus on drilling down on the thing that you've already discovered is profitable? In other words, if you had 10 chips, do you place your bets? Do you place all 10 chips on one bet? Or do you spread them out across 10 different project ideas or even 3 or 4 different business ideas entirely that you operate with separate teams as an entrepreneur? This is a deep question. It's not something I can fully answer in 5 minutes because there's so much nuance, so many layers to this that are dependent on your own personal goals, your risk tolerance, your capital reserves and resources. There's a lot of things that go into it, but I want to give you a framework today, a framework I call ICIT. And it's partly based on some conventional business concepts that you may have heard before, but then with a little tweak that I've added to make it actually work for entrepreneurship. So the ICE framework, essentially what you're going to do is you're going to take all of the ideas that you have for diversifying into new projects, new sources of income, or even new business ideas, and you're going to give them a score that's based on a matrix where you're using the ICIT framework. So the ICE framework, the traditional version, the I stands for impact. So in other words, is this even worth doing in the first place? If the total impact, if we succeed, is so small that it barely makes a difference, you're going to rank that low, right? That project or that idea. And the C from ICE stands for confidence. In other words, how confident are we that if we try to do this, we'll actually pull it off? If it's some technical thing you've never tried before, you don't have a tech team, and it's just a good guess, could we find people to help? Your confidence is going to be lower, right? And the E stands for ease of implementation. So how easy would it be for us to pull this off? And do we have the amount of time? So in other words, ease of implementation, you might think of that as the cost. So the I is like total impact and how much is it going to cost us in terms of time and money, manpower, resources in order to achieve that impact. And then it's mediated by your confidence that you can even do it in the first place. The risk there for the C in the middle of the ICE acronym, it's your confidence in whether you can pull off the project. And so what we're talking about there really is what is the opportunity cost of this? Because if there's a good chance that you're going to work on something and it's going to displace something else you could have worked on, and then it ends up not working at all, then there was a high opportunity cost because you didn't get anything out of that. So that's why confidence needs to be a part of that equation. Now, I add on these next two bits of the acronym to make it say ICIT instead of just ICE. And the I stands for insurance. Like, can we insure against risk? Because if you can try a whole bunch of things and the downside risk is virtually nothing, well, then we're going to want to add more projects to your plate because you can try them. And if it turns out to be just a fantastic gold mine, you can shift more of your resources and attention to that. And the second one, the T, it stands for time to money, or basically the time horizon that it takes to achieve an ROI on the time and resources invested in this. So what I mean by that is if you have 3 different projects that you're considering working on, and 2 of them would start paying off within 2 months after you put in the energy and the effort to get it going. But there's another one that maybe has a much higher impact total revenue, but it's going to be 2 or 3 years before your investment in that project and it starts to pay off because there's so much cost involved. A good example of that is a real estate business model, or let's say you buy a stadium and it takes the first 10 years of just paying down some of the interest and the various costs involved in acquisition and repair before you have enough revenue coming in that you even break even. So that the time horizon for that, or the speed of ROI, is low. Versus if we're talking about a small project, like should we hire some sales reps, and there's this option to be able to hire somebody who works on commission alone, then the speed of ROI is pretty much 100%, right? Because you only pay them a commission after they've already succeeded. And so that's also an example of something that has a very low risk. The risk is just the time it takes to find that person, train them, and get them onboarded so we can see if that even works. So there's the ICIT framework. So what you'd want to do is put that into a matrix where you give each of those items the total impact, the confidence we have that we can pull it off, ease of implementation, can we insure against risk, what is the time horizon for the ROI, and you put some sort of essentially you're going to weight each of those, and then you're going to put all your options down the other side and give each option a score on each of those factors that matter to you. And then based on the weighted score, you'll see a total score for each one, and you'll know, okay, these are the best ranking ones. Then the question becomes, now that you see the order in terms of like which ones are most preferable based on this categorization, then the question becomes, how much total capacity do you have in terms of the resources that are going to be needed to implement? Because if your total budget, let's just call it 10, the number 10 representing how much money you have to hire people, how much time you personally have to allocate to all of the various projects that you're going to take on, then it becomes a question of each one has a score of how much time it's going to take, how much resource it's going to take. And we can only fit in so many of those. Let's say you have 10 different ideas, and maybe you realize you can only fit in the top 3 when you honestly give each one a rating based on how much total resource it's going to take in terms of time and money. And again, that is mediated by speed of ROI, because if you have 3 things on that list that they're going to start paying for themselves within less than a month, well, then you can stack a lot more of those because the ROI is so fast, compared to if you have some projects on there that are going to take a good 6 months before you even find out if there's a good product market fit. So there's some considerations. It's a little bit complex, obviously, because this is at the core. The root of this is that we're trying to solve for an equation that matters to you, which involves the time horizon and how much risk you're willing to take in pursuing this. But this is a simplified way of boiling it down, giving yourself some ways to think on paper that allow you to gain greater clarity about whether it makes sense to diversify a lot or double down on just a few things. But there's one last step here. And the last step is that once you've scored each new project idea that you're considering diversifying into, I want you to do the same thing for ideas that you have. You might think of them as modules of expansion you can do on your existing projects. So often the question that comes in this form, Todd, should I double down on these 2 projects we have? This one's very profitable, this one's somewhat profitable. We believe this one could be more profitable if we put more time and attention into it. But what if we should just diversify and start these 2 or 3 other things that we've heard are good? And so what I'm trying to get you to do is to think now about the existing projects. And I want you to score them using the same rubric that you scored the possible new things. So those new things have some risk involved. They have this level of confidence. They have a total impact score. Give that same level of score to each module. I want you to crystallize each thing that you could do in your existing project and ask yourself, for this existing project, if we just said, well, we could expand this part, we could grow this piece, crystallize that into an option and compare it head to head with some of the new stuff you could go into in terms of, well, how much confidence do we have that it'll even work? What would be the total impact to our bottom line revenue if we did succeed? Go through that whole process again. And this forces you to have more discipline at looking at the stuff that's right in front of you, sometimes which is not tugging on your excitement as much because it lacks the novelty effect. We have this novelty bias. We feel like things that we haven't gotten into yet are more exciting because we haven't encountered the frustrations and the headaches with it yet. It's the grass is greener on the other side of the fence phenomenon. So what this process does for you is it helps you to decide what combination of existing and new projects you actually want to tackle based on what you know your total resource allocation is, and based on a fair analysis of what existing project opportunities you have compared to what new ones you have. And often when we do this analysis, I'll just tell you what tends to happen, and this is not 100%, but it tends to be that when we do this analysis, entrepreneurs realize that there's less risk and more impact from doubling down on what they've already proven to be successful. And they've already got teams and systems in place and resources that are allocated to that. Often there's more opportunity to collapse the time it takes to reach your goals by focusing on what you've already started, than trying to bring in new things that may or may not work, may carry higher risk. In essence, what it really comes down to when we're doing this analysis is this concept. This is how I think about business. When entrepreneurs ask me this question, I say, let me first give you this framework of how I think about this. Any new business idea is essentially a blueprint plus the confidence you have in your ability to execute on that blueprint, right? So if you gave me a blueprint and I was 100% sure it would work, and my confidence in that, the ability to execute, meaning I could find the team and I have enough money to pay the team long enough to pull it off, and I don't even need to be involved. If my confidence in the execution ability is also 100%, it's a no-brainer. I'm going to go for it, right? And so what we're really doing is we're trying to do an analysis to say, okay, it's rare if we ever have 100% confidence in both the blueprint, the idea itself, and our ability to pull it off well. And so let's kind of score these and do a fair, balanced analysis of what that looks like. That gives you a better sense of whether the added bonus of diversifying your income streams and your projects is worth the downside risk of diversifying your mind share and doing some things more poorly than you could have if you made it a bigger central focus. So here's your challenge this week. If you find yourself asking that question, and there's multiple layers and levels at which we ask this question. Sometimes it's at the level of, should I start a new business or a second or third business? Sometimes it's at the level of, should we do this big project simultaneously with these other two ideas or just the one? And sometimes it's just this week, what do I have time to take on? Or it could just be this month. There's multiple layers and levels at which the same framework can be useful to you. So I just challenge you to ask yourself, where does this show up in my entrepreneurial decision-making? How can I achieve the things that are most important in a shorter time horizon by carefully analyzing, using this ICIT framework to see where the odds are stacked in my favor? If you use this framework at least once a quarter for everything that you're considering taking on or that you have already taken on, I think you'll find it gives you increased certainty about where to place your bets, how many different bets to try all at once. And as a result of increasing your certainty, you'll increase your speed. I'll talk to you again soon.